Okay. Justin Cullen, welcome. Thank you so much for coming. You can give your name and everything just there for a start.
My name is Justin. I'm a musician, songwriter, play in a band called Frankenstein Bolts, which is a kind of a dreamy folk pop type band. I'm also a creative digital skills tutor, so I teach things like music production and podcasting, movie making, things like that. So yeah, all my work is kind of creative based or music based, so
Deadly, brilliant.
yeah.
Well, thank you so much. We're absolutely delighted to have you. We might
Thanks
start
for
you
having
off, since you are a musician, with a little bit of music for us, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know how this is going to sound with just the headphones here, but let's see. So this is like the first song that I wrote for Frankenstein Bolts, which is a long time ago now. It's like about 8 or 9 years ago. So it's called Bad Impressionist. You can hear me okay? Okay, excellent. In the jungle of your heart, there's a mountain, a sure-footed drop towards destruction to the bottom from the top. I can feel the sun on my back as I'm jumping the gorge in my day, hollow and empty as I try to hatch away at the nonsense that consumes my time. Sitting in the dark, trying hard to breathe, try to keep a handle on everything. Don't know how it starts, dragging both my feet, find it hard to grow in a yard full of weeds. In an unfamiliar room, you find a new recall for the silent type, and he'll show you how to really stay in tune with everything. So the day goes down like a domino, wade your way through a cameo, doing bad impressions of yourself. You should have been more careful, juggling those knives, they'll cut right through your flesh to your bone. Standing on the tightrope, no safety nets below, sitting in the park, trying to be seen, try to keep the goodness in everything. I don't know how it starts, dragging both my feet, find it hard to grow in a yard full of weeds.
That was just gorgeous. Wow.
Thank you. Thanks. 1 second, I'll throw this in the stand.
Take your time. It's a lovely little studio you have.
I had to put these headphones out. Sorry. Sorry about that. Thanks.
That was brilliant. Thank you so much for that now.
Thank you.
What was that song called again?
Bad Impressionist. And it's from an album that I released in 2014 called Slow Season. So when Frankenstein Bolts started, it was just kind of me and my bedroom just recording stuff. I had been in a band for a long time before that and just decided I'd like to go back to just making stuff on my own. And so I made a bunch of demos, and that was the first kind of demo that I did,
Yeah. And how would you describe your kind of music?
I suppose in that context, that's kind of a folkier song for us. They're not all folky. I suppose where it's at the moment, and it's gone through a few different phases. It's gone through sort of an electro synth based sound. It's gone into more of an indie rock sort of thing. And I think at the moment, with the stuff that we're doing at the moment, it has gone back to the folkier end of things, but it's a bit more atmospheric and stuff. So yeah, we try to kind of keep it fresh for ourselves, rather than trying, just repeating the same sound. So hopefully we're doing that, but it's about keeping ourselves interested, and so at the moment it's a kind of a noisy, atmospheric, but also kind of sweet folk sort of song in there somewhere, So
That's lovely. So a little bit
yeah.
of everything. You have a really wide variety there.
Yeah, absolutely. We're all into lots of different music, so yeah, it's just, I suppose it's been going a long time now, so you change as you go along. So
yeah.
it's
And how long have you been with the band?
So 2014, I was on my own for a bit, and then I kind of did a few things with some friends, came in to play with me for different gigs, and kind of got serious then about 2016 with another musician, Dan Comerford, who still plays with me. So we went as a duo for quite a long time. Then we added a drummer to the duo, Tom, and that was going like that for a little while. And then we added a bass player, so Brian is the bass player. So there's four of us now. So I think about 4 years kind of in that sort of coming to this lineup now. And this lineup it's quite solid now. It's a very comfortable lineup, Everyone's very comfortable and enjoying it, hopefully. So
good. And how did you get into songwriting originally? How did you start with your love of music?
I think my first bit of exposure to music was piano lessons and stuff like that. As you get when you're a kid, you're sent to piano lessons or sent to lessons and stuff. I really liked piano lessons, although I found it a hard instrument to play. So I did that all through my teenage years, piano. But at home, I was very lucky that my dad had a home studio down the bottom of the garden. He had he went from the 4-track recorder to the 8-track and all the way up then to his digital his digital recorders and stuff, his drum machines and things like that. So that was there as I was growing up as I was a kid. There's lots of songwriters coming through the house, stopping for coffee and then going down to do a bit of recording and all that. So I was around songwriters. I was also listening to albums and in the bed of a Sunday morning as a kid on my Walkman, and the people that wrote the songs I was listening to were down in the kitchen. So I was kind of around songwriters. And then in my teenage years, then it was all about being in bands and writing your own music. And that was a nice just scene in Wexford back then in the 90s. Lots of good bands and lots of good songwriters around, So yeah, that's kind of how songwriting started for me,
Yeah, so it was really embedded in your life.
It was, yeah. Music's a huge part of our house. Just big music fans and also people that play music, My parents they go to lots of gigs now. They go to like most gigs they can get to, they'll go to in Wexford, and it's just yeah, it's nice to be exposed to it that early, and it was always around, My parents were different tastes as well. My dad was into rock and glam rock and Black Sabbath and T-Rex and stuff like that. And my mom was into Aztec Camera pop stuff like that, It was good pop music. It was cool.
Yeah. And music was such a big part of your life growing up as a teenager in a really turbulent time. How did it help you through that?
Well, I mean, I felt lucky in a way that I had a good social circle back then. I had a lot of people into this, like-minded people, similar tastes, what they want to do. We had an outlet to create and perform. Sometimes that's a big problem for young people, is a venue that'll just put it on. We had that when we were teenager, with a venue and a guy that put on our gigs and let us play and write and rehearse together and all that sort of thing. So yeah, I think as a teenager, it's a hard time for any teenager being a teenager, but it's having that kind of outlet, that's that kind of place, that aim, that goal at the end of the Friday evening. You can go and play a gig with your friends and everyone is supporting each other. And I think it was the support really around that was what made it really,
Yeah, and how important is that outlet, do you think, for people's mental health, especially for young people's?
Well, I think it's very important. I think being creative is an important thing for your mental health. I think, humans are just naturally creative. Making something, being immersed in something, you know, like when I'm making something, I'm doing that. I'm not worried about the future or thinking about the past. I'm kind of being, I suppose, like a form of mindfulness, and being present with something. So I think having these, like a creative outlet for young people, it's very important, really. It's something to channel your emotions, your thoughts, your points of view, find your voice, not, you know that sort of platform that gives you your something to kind of work at, and focus at. I think
Yeah,
it's important.
definitely.
So yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. And it is such an important outlet, and we know firsthand, especially with poetry and creative writing. But some people might be listening to this now and saying, oh, why do you have a songwriter on? That has nothing to do with literature. But songwriting is a form of writing, and it's a form of poetry, as many would
Yeah.
think of it. Tell me a little bit about your creative process. How do you create a song? Do you start with the melody or the words, or is it just an idea in your head?
um there's I used to start with lyrics was what kind of steered the melody and the chords for me. But there was a time when I really struggled with lyrics, and lyrics are something that kind of I used to labor over quite a lot, and sometimes that laboring over something's not a good idea, really. It's you can kind of try and shape it so much that it's just not anything like the original idea that you had. So I think I come up with some lyrics, and then I'll just sing that lyric. I can play a couple of chords and just sing that lyric. I don't, in when I'm writing, I don't try to rhyme. um I don't give myself any limitations from the very beginning. So in the last few years, I've been working in kind of draft form. So you'd write something, and then you go back and you do a small bit of editing and try that out with the chords, and sing it and see what happens. But I think for me, I don't like to limit myself from the start with things like rhyming and stuff like that. I just like to write something down and work with it and just try and mold it into something that I find interesting. Um, I There's quite a lot in terms, like you were talking about the mental health end of it. There's quite a lot of things that you can jump into your creative process without you knowing, and then all of a sudden you find you've wandered down a path, say, that's kind of got you stuck, or it's got you kind of I might move on to something else. And I try to avoid these things. So the way I do that is I prepare my writing sessions quite a bit. So I have a lot less time now. At the age I'm at now, I have a lot less time than I did 10 years ago, when I could, schedule 8 hours for a nice jam session. Some days now I have half an hour. Some days, if I'm lucky, I can get maybe an hour and a half in for myself. But the main thing that I do is I still schedule that half an hour. I still schedule 15 minutes, and I work for that half hour, or I work for that hour and a half. With goal-based work, I come in, I was like, all right, I need a verse for a song, I need a starting line for a song. That's what I'm going to focus on for that half an hour. If I come away with that, then I'm very happy. I have sat there for 8 hours looking for a starting line, and it hasn't come. So what I'm finding now is that because I've less time, I'm actually getting more stuff, getting more done now, because there's not as much procrastination, or I don't try and answer my emails and wash up and do all that stuff before I get to you find any excuse to do something, but the work in front of you. So if I have 9 till 9:30, if I have 10 o'clock in the morning till 2 in the afternoon, I'm trying to be working for that. I want to work on something for that. And then I think with the lyrics and the music and stuff like that, once I have a song, once I have a lyric and a song, and sometimes you don't need a fully fleshed out song. You can just go in with the first draft. Like I said, I would record it on my computer. I have a little home studio here, and then I'll maybe drop like a beat into it or a bass line into it, and that will spark the next thing that's going to happen with the song. So that's kind of, in terms of how I write songs, that's kind of where I'm at. So start it on the guitar and try and finish as much as I can on the guitar and the voice, and then I'll sit down in front of a computer. What happens when you sit in front of a computer is you're faced with all these options again. So I can turn this knob to do this thing, and then I can put just fader through this and send it out and back in and up and around. And you've got all these options, and it's you can kind of get a bit, sometimes less is more when it comes to options to do with your production and stuff. So that's kind of how I do it. Once I'm inside the computer, I'm just mixing and recording and trying things out and adding instruments and loops and harmonies and all that stuff,
Yeah. And is it that kind of structure and giving that time to your art that you'd encourage younger songwriters to do? Because it's very hard to find time in your day to actually sit down and, do something creative.
Absolutely. I think, I know it's a little bit, it might sound a little bit uninspiring or something, or kind of like you imagine a poet or someone writing a novel or somebody writing a play or a songwriter or somebody just gets struck by this inspiration. They sit down and wherever they are and they write it down, and that's cool if it works for you. That doesn't work for me. I don't meet inspiration every day, and sometimes I'm lucky to meet something that inspires me. But the thing I'll find is if you schedule this time and you turn up to this time every day, and I'm talking and every day sounds like a lot as well. So if you don't have time in your day before, when you're in school or if you're in work or you come home, then you've got family and stuff like that, or whatever that you do, I would say try and get up early. I find early morning is great for me. That's the time that works for me for writing lyrics, for writing melodies. It's because I'm still kind of half asleep and I've met nobody. I haven't, read any emails or answered any text messages, seen any social media. So my head is fresh and it's still kind of sleepy. So it's a nice time to write. But I would say if you schedule that and you turn up every day, eventually that habit is formed of just creating and writing. And if you can go away after your 15 minutes or your an hour and a half or 2 hours with something that you really think is something that's worth working on, then that's a good thing, Yeah. Definitely schedule it. I'd also say declutter your work area. So at the moment, I'd hate to show you what way this is at the moment here, but it's only because I've been working all day. But usually before I start to write, I clean the place up a little bit so that my head is a bit more, it's less cluttered itself, So that's definitely something. Schedule a nice area for yourself to write in, even if it's a short time,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in that kind of sleepy, relaxed state in the morning, where do you get your inspiration from your lyrics? Because that was a gorgeous song there, and it was obviously very soft, and there was a lot of imagery in it. Where do you pull that from? Do you take it from your own life, or is it just completely out of your head?
I've over the years, and I'm writing songs since I was 14, so it's a long time, right? And over the years, I've tried different things. I've tried to pick random words out of a book and just sing them and see what, mix them around and chop things up and put them, And some of those things work for a while for me, but the thing now is that I find the less I'm thinking about something, the better it is when it comes out on paper. Now, I'm not saying it all comes out really good or anything, but there's a line in there somewhere that would definitely be a good starting line or a good chorus line, So at the moment, for me, I'm playing my guitar into my amp, which is being recorded by my computer. You can just record it with your phone. If you got an acoustic guitar, just stick your phone down and just play, and then record 12 minutes, 15 minutes of it, and then go back and listen to it and find that line. Sometimes it's complete gobbledygook. It sounds more than words, and when I go back and listen to it, I can kind of go, I can hear that word in there, and I'll write that word down. And then the next morning when I get up, I'll just maybe write a line with that word in it, or maybe I'll I'll just find some sort of random gobbledygook in the stuff I've recorded and find lyrics from it. But in terms of, I do have tools in my toolkit as well. If I'm completely stuck, I have ways of inspiring myself in terms of little ways of working, like coming up with a metaphor or something like that. I do have things like that I can go to. Something like writing in the language of, where you kind of take something like a battery or something like that, and you write all the words you think of, with a battery, like power and life and charge and all these lovely words that go with battery. And then I'll just pick some sort of emotion and I'll try and write about that emotion using those words, Sometimes that doesn't make for good lyrics for me, in terms of, like, I think it's too kind of thought out, but it's a good way of getting the blank page out of your day, It's a good way of getting things started on a paper. And I think sometimes that's the biggest thing, is the biggest hurdle is a blank page in front of you and getting started, So yeah, I think in the morning time, in a dreamy state, they come a lot easier. It comes a lot easier. A good line will come if you're, I don't know, if you're just not, you've got kind of, you haven't been interrupted yet. There's nothing in your day that's kind of caused you a little bit of anxiety, or, you kind of, I have to go and post that letter. I have to be out here by, you're kind of just awake and you're just ready to, I think, you're a bit more open or something to things coming in,
Yeah.
So yeah, I hope that answered your question. Or, yeah, it's a good time of day for me, morning time. Yeah, because of that, you haven't talked to anybody and you're on your own, and it's a nice way to be when you're writing, I think. Yeah, I find later on at night harder to do lyrics. I tend to work on music late at night and lyrics more in the morning time for that reason,
Yeah, so splitting it up and knowing your strengths and weaknesses. And you touched on some really interesting points there, like self-editing and starting off and kind of writer's block nearly to a point. And I guess a lot of people wouldn't associate, again, songwriting with poetry or creative writing, but it's all one and the same. We all get a mental creative block and we all self-edit. We always think that, we always think that, oh, this isn't good enough, or, as you're going along, you're editing yourself. How do you kind of overcome that? How did you get to a point? Because you're obviously, you weren't always, the chill, confident musician that I'm chatting to right now. How did you get to the point that you were comfortable in your music and comfortable with what you were creating?
Well, for the writer's block thing first, the thing that you mentioned with the writer's block, I don't really know if that has anything to do with the type of writer that you are. Like, even if you're a journalist or if you're a poet, or if you have to write something, you still expect, you still have put expectations on yourself to come up with something original in front of you on a piece of paper. But I think it's a lot more to do with writer's block of stuff. And this is just down to books that I've read and stuff. A friend of mine sent a book to me over the first lockdown about the ego, the human ego. And I can call it, there's a few names for it. I've heard it called monkey brain. I've heard it called, the inner critic kind of thing. And that's just to do with just really being too hard on yourself when it comes to being, judging yourself and your work, and not being, being more worried about maybe the outcome of what you're doing rather than just having fun with it. And I think being creative is about having fun first and foremost. You should have fun. If something is causing you to labor over something, then I would stop for a second and ask yourself, like, am I being too hard on myself here, or am I actually even interested in what I'm doing here? And just do something else, start something else. Or, I think writer's block is the human ego. If you can learn how to leave that at the door, you'll be flying. And unfortunately for me, it's only the last few years I've learned how to do that, and just not worry about what I'm going to be doing with this piece of music that I'm writing, or this song that I'm writing. You have to kind of stop thinking about, how am I going to release this? What sort of video am I going to make for this? Is this going to, are my friends going to think this is good? Is the audience going to enjoy this? If you can learn how to leave that stuff out of your process, writer's block should be a little bit easier to deal with. I think that's where writer's block comes up for me anyway. It's just a month of just being way too hard on myself instead of just doing something else. And sorry, you said something after you asked me about that song, and about being confident with my music. Is that right?
Yeah, and I think,
sorry.
No, you're fine. It ties
Yeah.
into what you're saying there with leaving the ego at the door, and that's how you progressed only in the last few years. I was just asking how you kind of got to that stage.
Yeah, sorry. Well, I think I've been in a lot of bands over the years, and I think at the end of the band that I was in before before Frankenstein, before I started Frankenstein Bolts, I spent a long time in that band. I was in about 9 years. That's a long time, you know, to be in a band. And I loved being in that band. And I was in a band with good friends and stuff like that. And I just needed a break from kind of the type of music we were doing. I needed just start again. I went to guitar lessons again. I was playing guitar for years. I just went back to guitar lessons, and somebody that was much better guitar player than I was just showed me how to play this stuff. And he actually taught me the fingerstyle picking that I was doing there, which I don't do in every song I play or anything, but it was so nice to learn how to play a different style of guitar. And that just started me on that Frankenstein Bolts type thing then. But over the years, then you get to know your sound. And I think this is important as well, that I don't know if anybody, regardless of the type of writing you're doing, starts off with a voice, you know, like their own voice. I mean, it's about finding it, and that could take a few years to do. You could be lucky and find it in a few months, you know. I always like to kind of think that I'm still trying to find that, but I'm getting a bit closer, I think. And I like my sound. I like working with synthesizers and different types of effects, and I like certain types of melodies and certain types of drum beats. And I just kind of, every time I do something, I just get a little bit more comfortable with not get comfortable in a lazy kind of like, oh, I've got a formula here now, but I just know that what I enjoy doing, you know, and it's taken a little bit of time to do that. Just from trying different things out. That's all it really is, you know, and embracing mistakes. I think you make a mistake, that's it. It's a mistake, you know. And when I say mistake, I mean, you know, if you write a song and you realize later on that was a bit, you know, a little bit out of, you know, what I really wanted to do. It was a little bit kind of, I didn't quite hit the mark with that or something, but I'm after letting everybody hear it or something like that, you know, or just, you know, move on from it. Don't beat yourself up over things like, and failures as well. When you're creating, it's just about failure and just learning from the failure and just going on and doing the next thing and trying something else, you know, not to dwell on things that way. And I tried to, over the last few years, not to dwell on things and mistakes that I make or failures that I have when I'm creating music and songs. And after a while, you just kind of you just feel what works for you. You find your sound, you know. But I think in music, you might call it finding your sound, and maybe in poetry and literature, you might call it finding your voice, you know.
Yeah, so. And it's all one and the same, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Justin, is there anything coming up for you in the future? Is there any new music coming out that we're able to plug a little bit?
There is new music being made. I was very lucky, actually, over the last while. The band were still, you know, before the lockdowns, in between the lockdowns, and all the lads were coming out and rehearsing with me and working on all brand new stuff. So our main focus at the moment is a third album. And making albums is the same as making songs, in a way that you do an album and you're a different band after you do your first album. And then you do another album and you're a completely different band. And what I mean by different band is, like, every time you do an album, you go, right, I'm going to do the next one this way or a little bit differently, you know. So I'm really looking forward to this third album. I'm looking forward to a completely different process of making an album for us. We're going to do a lot of it live tracked and stuff. We're going to play it together. What you're hearing on the song is going to be a band playing together, and I'm really looking forward to that, because you can't beat the human interaction, you know.
No, definitely.
So that's it. Yeah. So we're going to record it ourselves as well, which is exciting. So we have a guy that works with us, Paul. He records our stuff. So we're going to mix it and do all that ourselves this time, which I'm really looking forward to. So that's another whole other instrument. Recording is another instrument to play with. So that's where our heads are at the moment. We don't, like any other musicians around the country, we don't know what the future is going to be like for playing gigs and things. We do have a gig coming up in Sky in the Ground in Wexford on the 16th of December. Social distance gig where, you know, I think it's 15 tickets or something like that, you know. So it's going to be quite an intimate thing. And I'm really looking forward to that, you know.
Brilliant.
And we have two nights in the Art Centre. I think it could be after Christmas now. We sold one night out, or one show out, and we had another one put on in the Art Centre for November for last week, I think it was, and with the lockdown then it was postponed. So that would be on again, I'd say, after Christmas, you know. So that's
hopefully,
what's
hopefully we'll be able to see you perform soon live. But for now, I might ask you to do a little bit online. One last song just to finish up.
Oh,
Justin, Cullen, thank you so much for coming again, and loved having you.
Okay, so when we had the first album recorded and stuff, we were like, well, we're going to call the band, you know. So it was like that. The album was ready before the band had a name. So this song is called Frankenstein Bolts, which is, the song came before the name of the band. So this is this was probably one of the first 3 that I wrote. Warm is the air that covers you here at the foot of the hill. Water is still. The crew on the hull, belly is full, but fuels from the mountain. Lost is the boy with the wondering eyes. His mother is at war, and she's out of her mind. He likes to hang his coat on her Frankenstein bolts. It stops her from shouting. And this won't last forever. And this won't last a day. And you'll make your mind up. Stay. Stay. And this won't last forever. And this won't last a day. This won't last forever. Far out is she with the criminal eyes. The morning slopes just slightly around her terrible size. They're going to need a truck when she finally dies. They're going to need a truck. This won't last forever. This won't last a day. This won't last forever. This won't last forever. This won't last a day.